My talk today is about opening research processes to the public. And as mentioned already, I'm going to talk more about the nQuire platform. A little bit of background before we move into the tool. So more than 25 years ago, there was the ambition of committing volunteers in research, not as subjects, but mainly as active participants in the research process. And by this, there was the intention of having people to decide on what research to do, commissioning research, interpreting findings, and disseminating findings. Since then, we've seen various ways the general public can be involved in research. And actually, we've seen those activities under the umbrella of the citizen science. So for those who are not familiar, a very brief definition of citizen science here is research that is undertaken by members of the public. In most of the times, this activity is in collaboration with universities and academics. It can take different forms, can have different objectives, it can be simple or more complex. But the main characteristic is that you have ordinary people who are not researchers, involved in the research process. In terms of how people can take part in citizen science, we have seen over the years several taxonomies. And I have in my next slide two of them, just to give you a sense of how engaged people can become with research activities. So on the left-hand side is a taxonomy with 4 levels. The first level is, let's say, a basic engagement with research. And here you may be asking people to, for example, place sensors in their gardens to capture pollution. So it doesn't require any cognitive engagement. It's more about supporting scientists and their activities. In level 2, we have citizens as data collectors and data analysts. And actually, most of the citizen science projects at the moment focus on level 2. Level 3 and level 4 are a bit more demanding in terms of people's engagement with research. So in level 3, we have people participating in defining a research problem and also collecting data. And maybe the most advanced level of involvement is what people call extreme citizen science. We call it citizen inquiry, and I'm going to tell more about it in my next slides. So here is 100% collaboration between scientists and the public, from defining the problem, devising research questions, deciding how to collect data, collecting and analyzing data. On the right-hand side is another way of organizing, let's say, the different types of citizen science projects. I would just draw your attention on the co-created type of projects. And here you can see all of the boxes being black. This means that the public is involved in all the stages of the scientific process. While collaborative and contributory projects, they involve people in a few of these steps and not all. What I'm going to explain here is the conceptual basis, let's say, of the nQuire platform. So a few years ago, we've published an edited collection on citizen inquiry. And citizen inquiry is the concept we use to stress the importance of engaging the public actively in the process of research. And by actively, we refer to all of the stages of the scientific process, from definition of a problem to deciding how to collect the data, how to analyze and interpret, how to disseminate it. As we paid special attention here on shifting the focus from scientists to members of the public. And we saw the public as being active in defining their own research agenda. So you could see a problem starting with people based on their needs and requirements, and then with them designing and developing the whole research process. Recently, we revised the concept of citizen inquiry. We felt that the term citizen may not be inclusive enough. So in one of the publications we had in 2021, we talk about community-led citizen inquiry. And the reason was that the term citizen is a bit contested in the US. So there are requirements for someone to be a citizen in the US. Also, we wanted to put emphasis on collective action and on communities. And also we wanted to encourage research that can bring solutions to problems that people are facing within their communities. You may be wondering here, okay, how are we going to achieve participation of communities in citizen science projects? What we have here is three streams of work that we think can actually enable participation of communities in research. The first one is technological, it's a technological solution. It's actually nQuire. I'm going to talk more about it. The second one is a close collaboration with scientists. And this is because we acknowledge that the general public may not have the skills or knowledge to do original research. Therefore, they need to work in collaboration with scientists to achieve the best outcomes for science and for themselves. And the third one, we see this collaboration being beneficial not only for the scientists, but also for the communities and the people involved in research. So we try to create research activities that provide learning to participants, and they can be seen as a lifelong learning experience. And we do this with a number of features on nQuire. For example, we ask people to do things, so they learn by doing. We give them personalized feedback depending on the type of study someone designs. We also open up some of the studies to the public, so you can actually see what other people are saying and learn about other perspectives and other opinions. And also we visualize data the moment it is collected, so you get feedback right after you take part in a study. So the next part of my presentation is all about nQuire. For those who are not familiar, nQuire is a website, an online website. You can access it at nquire.org.uk. It's a space where you can design a study, you can pilot your study, you can collect data, visualize your data, and share findings while the study runs or when the study has ended. The reason now we designed nQuire, the motivation was to help people with no scientific or research background to learn how research is done and how science is produced. And we achieve this by allowing them to take part in studies and learn through the process, and also set up and manage their own studies. If I zoom out of the focus on citizen science, I would say that the bigger purpose here is to help people start thinking critically and scientifically. And we know how important critical thinking is in the era we live in, and possibly how AI and Gen AI developments are shaping our realities. So I think that engaging people in research could be a way to develop their critical thinking skills. Now, nQuire, it's got, when you visit nQuire on the homepage, you can see three calls for action: build, take part, and learn. So you can build your study, take part in studies of others, and learn through the process. And there are details as to how you can design a study, how you can test and improve it and get feedback and make your design better, how you can launch your study and collect data, and how you can analyze and share your findings with your participants and also on the platform. What I want to stress here is that all of the studies that are live on nQuire have gone through ethical approvals, either from the OU ethics body or other ethics bodies that affiliate with the organizations that are setting up the studies. So all of the activities are ethically done and treated strictly in terms of ethical standards. Also, in terms of data security, we follow the Open University protocols of GDPR and also the privacy and the electronic communications regulations of the European Commission. What I have here is a number of screenshots. Is that show in a way the process you go through in order to set up a study. We have a tool called the authoring tool, and this is the tool that enables people to set up their own studies. The first stage is called start, and here you need to put the name of your mission, the research question behind your study, and describe the mission briefing. In the mission briefing, we ask each study to describe the benefits to science, and most importantly, the benefits participants will have from taking part in the study. So they need to be explicit as to what I will learn as a participant if I take part in your study. Then the second step is the build, and here you are given a range of different types of answers you can use to design your study. So we have basic, or let's say traditional types of questions like multiple choice questions or yes or no questions, but we also have more innovative ways of collecting data, I would say. For example, you can ask people to upload an image as a response to a question, or you can ask people to collect data using the sensors of their devices, like sound or light data, and upload a graph of the recording to the platform. The latest development here is the Q-sort. It's somewhere in the middle. I don't know if you can see it. So this is an activity led by my colleague Ann Adams that has been working with the Parliament for the last 2 years. And there was a need in the Parliament to prioritize topics they would focus their committees on in the future. So we developed this tool as a means for people to sort out and prioritize topics as high priority and low priority. So there is a way for voting, let's say, through the platform, through prioritization. The next step is the confirm and consent. So there's always a consent people need to read and abide to before they start sharing their data. The consent form says that you need to be 16 years old and older to take part in nQuire. Having said that, we had studies with younger people, and the way these work is that to take part, you need to do it with a guardian or a teacher. Also, the consent form can be customized based on the requirements of the ethics body you are getting approvals from. The last step, and probably is the one that goes to the scientists or the researchers behind the nQuire platform. So here you do the piloting, you improve your study, and you are ready to launch it. Before it's launched, it goes through a process of approvals. No, I don't have a slide here. So it goes through a process of approvals. So the study comes to us. We go through all of the questions, all of the answers, all of the information shared, and we check them in terms of appropriate content, language, appropriate design of questions. We give feedback to the researchers, and when they do changes and they are ready, we make the mission live on the platform. I say mission because the studies on nQuire, we tend to call them missions. Another question I often get is what type of missions or studies are hosted on nQuire. So I took a screenshot of the Explore page of nQuire here. And you can see that we have studies on literacy, on biodiversity, aging, teaching activities, trees, antibiotic resistance, or novels. Actually, any study can be hosted on nQuire. And recently we created themes and subjects so people can filter out of existing studies and find the ones they want to look at. So the themes we currently have is missions on community, equality, learning, sustainability, and well-being. And in terms of subjects, we have education, environment, literature, medicine, psychology, and technology. But we could expand those themes and subjects in the future if we have, topics that do not fit under these categories. The one other decision you need to do when you design your study is whether the study or the mission is going to be confidential or social. And there is a big difference between these two types of missions. Confidential missions are more like the traditional research studies or surveys we do we do with humans. So all of the answers are confidential, cannot be read or accessed by anyone beyond the person who designs the study. And I'll give you an example of that in the next slide. Social missions is quite innovative though, because whatever you post there becomes open to anyone who visits the platform to read it, like it, or comment on it. So in a way, you can see what others are saying about the topic of the study. Also, social missions have some visualization features, I would say. The first thing is that you can see the data on a map, so you can see where responses are coming from in terms of location. Also, you can get summary graphs of closed questions. So, for example, if you have a multiple choice questions with 5 options, you can see which is the most popular because you can get a graph about the specific question. And again, I will give you an example of a mission to see what this looks like. So the first example I've got here is the OU Pollinator Watch. This was designed during COVID by OU academics. It had nearly 8,000 responses. And the idea here was to ask people to take pictures of pollinators in their gardens or local parks. Through the process, we wanted people to learn more about pollinators and try to preserve them and support them with the actions they take. And it was quite successful because it also encouraged people to get out of their homes and engage with nature while being in isolation. So it was one of the successful missions on nQuire in terms of number of contributions. Another example is the Garden Watch mission. This happened a few years ago. It was the most successful one in terms of number of contributions. We reached more than 200,000 responses. It was a study in collaboration with the British Trust of Ornithology. And here the idea was to go out in your garden and become a detective and find the mammals, worms, and birds that live in your garden and record them on nQuire. What was interesting was the findings of the study, because in a way it gives ideas of how people could encourage more living species in their backyards. So, for example, we found that only 40% of gardens, do not have a log pile. If they had one, they would encourage wildlife. So it's an action they could take to support biodiversity. And some other things here, like leaving grass to grow or feeding hedgehogs. So you can see here how the findings can actually turn into action and improve biodiversity in this case. Now, an example of a social mission. This is called the Noise Map mission. The idea here was to capture the level of noise where you work or in the classroom or school. And again, the moment you have this kind of data, you could use it to influence policy or take actions to improve the level of noise where you are. This is a social mission. So as you can see here, you could see the contributions on a map. So where the recordings of noise took place. And on the right-hand side, you can see the actual recording uploaded by different participants. In addition to this, I mentioned the data visualizations. These are coming from another study on mental health, which was social open. And here you can see, for example, what the young people think about the different interventions in terms of supporting their mental health and which of them are more popular and which are less popular. Also, you can see here the suggestions of people of how the youth could be supported at schools regarding their mental health. So any type of closed question, I would say it could be associated with a graph that anyone can access while the study is running on nQuire. Here I have an overview of the organizations and people who created studies on nQuire. We have mainly universities and academics interested in designing studies. Also, we had some successful collaborations with non-academic organizations like the Mental Health Foundation, the Young Foundation, BBC, and the Royal Meteorological Society. Recently, we got a grant on mental health, and we work with 3 non-profit organizations in Northern Ireland to design, to support mental health for young people. And as part of the activities, we are going to use nQuire to design some studies with youth. In terms of individuals, so far we only had two cases, two people. They happened to have a PhD that they wanted to design a study, and they actually designed it and made it live on nQuire. We would like to encourage more individuals and more organizations to use nQuire, so we can actually help those who do not have the skills to develop them through the platform. One of our latest developments is a version of nQuire for students. So this is part of the Horizon funded project that started 3 years ago. It is focused on teaching design thinking to students. And for those who are familiar with design thinking, some phases of it relate to understanding the human needs. So we developed a version of nQuire that could be used to teach students how to design a study. We call it nQuire for students. It has the basic functionality of nQuire and also additional features. So, for example, it's password protected. It can be accessed only by teachers and students from one school. So if students are coming from different schools, they cannot see the data of students and teachers coming from other schools. They can only see their school's data. Also, there are, as the basic nQuire, I would say they can design, manage, and pilot studies, and they can also collect data from other students in their school. The teachers can review studies, give feedback, and help students improve their designs through nQuire. There is also a classroom management system here that helps teachers create student accounts and manage their classes. And we hope that nQuire will develop students' research skills. Actually, we are analyzing data at the moment, and we try in particular to see the impact of using nQuire on critical thinking and development of research skills. And it can be used independently or as part of a design thinking project. So the last part of my talk today has to do with what people say about nQuire after they've used it. So in 2022, we ran a study with 150 participants of nQuire. The majority of them took part in one mission, one study only. We allocated the survey to them, and we asked them to tell us what helps or inhibits their participation on nQuire. And by participation, we mean having here creating their own studies or taking part in studies of others. So what we have found is that there are diverse motivations for people to take part in studies on nQuire. The main one is to contribute to research and science. Then there is this belief to help with science and that this is important. Some of them had interest in the topic of the study they took part in. Some others, they wanted to learn more about the topic. And a few of them said that they would like to experience what it's like to take part in a citizen science project. Now, when we ask them what they learned from taking part on nQuire, half of them, I would say, they said that I know a little bit more about the topic of the mission, and 8% they said that I know a lot more about it. So the learning benefits, as described by participants, is increased awareness about the topic of the mission. The second one is a desire to learn more about the topic after taking part in a study. And you can see on the right-hand side some actual quotes from the participants. Some of them said that after taking part in the study, I changed some of my everyday habits. So this was about ambient sounds while walking out in the forest. So it focuses more on the sounds of nature, and this made that participant feel more productive and calm. And the last one is about taking action to support biodiversity, which I would say maybe is the most difficult learning benefit to achieve. If originally the objective is to achieve increased knowledge and skills, motivating people to take action maybe is the most difficult aspect of learning. And we had, though, some participants saying that it led me to read up on helping pollinators and provide habitat in my garden. So you can see here that there was an impact, an actual impact following participation in this study about pollinators. This question asked them about whether they would create their own study in the future. And it was quite interesting because, as you can see, 70 or even 80%, they said it's unlikely to create my own study. They explained this referencing factors like lack of time to design a study and analyze data, that they don't have the knowledge and skills to do so, that they need support and they don't have it. They didn't know that this was possible. They didn't know that it was possible for them to design a study. And maybe the most striking to me was that creating a project is not for the general public. So there was this perception that those who should be creating projects are scientists and not members of the public, because of the widespread perception that universities and academics are the only ones that should be designing projects. So there was the question of why should I? So the lessons we learned from nQuire and following those studies is that there are free tools available that can support individuals and communities to design their own personally relevant studies. There are learning benefits from taking part in studies, but the important factor here is to design the study in a way that promotes learning. So you need to think what is the objective for science, but also what is the objective for the public to take part in the study. The third point here is that we need all of us to raise awareness of the importance of of helping people create their own studies. And of course, there are issues here about improving decision-making, addressing challenges in the society, developing ownership in any solutions we propose. So there are lots of benefits of working with people to design studies or help them design their own studies. And the last lesson I wanted to stress here is that there is a need for universities to open their doors to communities to facilitate citizen science activities. And the reason is that communities need support to design a study or test a study or complete a study. So the way of doing this is if there is a close collaboration between communities and universities. And in terms of this point, we interviewed last year, we published it 2 years ago, 14 academics from the OU that are doing actually research with people. Some of them are focusing on citizen science specifically. Some others are just engaging people in research. And we asked them how we could possibly democratize our research practices through citizen science. And they raised the need for a center or a facility with those 5 factions that could actually help them work closely with communities and develop networks and collaborations that can empower people and communities to take part in research. So they talk here about the learning and networking faction, research faction, facilitation, funding allocation, and innovation in research. So they would like to see a center promoting or enabling these kind of factions as a means of enabling collaborations with communities in the form of the public being involved in all the stages of the scientific research. So this was actually my last slide. I want to thank you for listening, and of course, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
That is brilliant.